Hi everyone, we are going to begin now. So this webinar is on Google Sheets. So in this webinar we'll go into Google Sheets, how to use it, some of the basics of it, and then also going into some of the add-ons, and specifically we'll look into Formula, which is one of the add-ons for Google Sheets. So before we get started, I just want to show you that if your screen is a little bit blurry for YouTube, if you hover over it and then go down to the settings, change the quality from auto or whatever you might have it as, and then just up it to the highest quality, so to 480. And that will improve the quality for that. So in order to get into Google Sheets, there's a couple of ways we can do it. I'm just going to open up a new Google tab for us. And so the first thing we can do is we can go over here and we can open up a sheet. We can also open it directly from our drive in whatever folder that we want it in. I usually always like opening it up from a drive just because it helps to organize everything, but for right now we'll just open it up into a sheet. So like the other applications, Google Docs, Forms, Slides that we looked at the other week, whenever you open up from the apps launcher right here, you're brought to this page right where you can get templates. So now we have a bunch of different templates that we could use to create our own spreadsheets. So if you have a particular template that you want to use, say if you're doing a calendar for your class or for the school, I don't think you guys will be using, maybe you guys use invoices if you're going to do that on your own if you don't already have one for your school. The timesheet, maybe it'd be really beneficial for some students. Same with the schedule, your schedule, student schedule. You have different work ones that you can use. Education, there's one for attendance, or there's also a grade book. So those are some great things that you might want to look into as well. However, for right now, we're just going to look at and open up a blank one. So now that we have our blank one, it's still working, it's still loading for a second. Up here we can title it. So I'll title this 1024 Google Sheets. So each of these little individual rectangles is called a cell. So if we have A1, this is A1 cell. Down here, this is D3. So these are really important when you want to do formulas later on. So these are your cells, these are your columns, and these are your rows. So if you select here, it will highlight everything in that row. Same with the columns, you select the top of it, it will highlight everything in that column. If you click in the upper left-hand corner right here, it'll select the entire sheet. It's kind of a handy little tip to have if you need it. This box right here is where you'd write in any formulas, and anything that goes right here, so if we said first name, is actually what's shown up here. So if I'm typing right here, Amy, it goes right there. So depending on what you're doing, sometimes it might be helpful to be typing with a box up here rather than in the actual cell. So let's make a list of some students. We'll put some first names, their last name, we can do an email, and then let's do a grade. We'll make up grades. And I'm just going to put in initials here for the sake of it, just so I don't, have to type in a bunch of different people's names. Actually, we'll go Carrie, Lauren, Steve. And we'll put in some initials for letters. So we have some first names, some last names, some emails, and this will make it larger if we scroll over here like this. And I'm just going to copy all the emails down. So in order to copy down, I selected the box, this little plus sign right here, and I just dragged it down. And that will copy down everything for as long as I want it to be. Next is we're going to put some grades in. So let's say 90, 85, 70, 89. So we have a bunch of different grades. We have some first names, last initials, emails, grade. In order to change the formatting of any text, if I wanted to make this whole first line bold, I can select the 1 and everything will be highlighted, and click on bold right here, and everything is automatically bolded. Now let's say I want to center it. We can go here, we can center it. If we happen to make this a little bit larger like this, notice how it's at the bottom of the cell. If I select the whole thing again and click here, I can have it centered into the middle. So those are kind of handy little things to have just to make sure your cells are lined up nicely. So then what we can do is actually highlight just the cells that we want, and we're going to color them. So the reason why I did these 4 cells and I didn't select this whole thing, because if I select this whole thing and then I go to color the cell, so fill color, and say we do a light gray, notice the entire row is filled. Maybe I don't want all these boxes to be filled in with color. So I'll select it again, go back to fill, and reset it. And reset it will just automatically put it back to, transparent. So I'll select them again, fill color, light gray, and now we're good to go. So now that I have some grades in here, emails, let's make the class average. So we have class average. And so we want to find the class average from D2 to D5. So what I could do, now whenever you do a formula, you need to put the equal sign. If you do not have the equal sign, it will not work. So you could have everything right, but without the equal sign, it will not work. So what you're going to do is you're going to do equals, type in average, parentheses. So technically, you could click on 90 plus 85 plus 70 plus 89. And notice how I clicked on each one every time, and then close parentheses. And that's not giving me the average, right? So what you do is you do average D2 colon, D2 colon D5. And when I press enter, it will automatically create the average. This little colon right here means through. So we'll do the average of D2 through D5. If for any reason you don't want to remember that, and sometimes when you're doing a whole bunch of different formulas, you don't want that. Even I, was obviously, I pressed a couple buttons and was messing it up a little bit. You notice how if I don't do this, it just comes up looking like that. It just comes up as text. Or say I had the equals and I forgot the D5, it comes up as error because the formula was incorrect. So say if, for whatever reason I don't want to worry about that, I can select the grades that I want the average for, go to this little function button, and then click on average. Press enter, and it will automatically do it for me. And right here, you automatically have a couple different functions. So you have sum, average, count, the max and the min. So it'll tell you the count is how many there are. the maximum of numbers. If you click on more functions, you'll be brought to a separate page which has a whole list of all different functions. So you can really search for whatever you want. So the really nice thing about this too is that it obviously tells you different parts of it, but also kind of tells you what it can do. And there's so many here. I mean, I'm just scrolling through them. Some of them you might never use, but some of them could be really helpful. Like the proper one, it will capitalize letters and words. So say I had a bunch of names and I want to make these all proper. I can go equals proper and it automatically capitalizes it. So that's really helpful if you had, a whole class roster or for whatever reason, then first or last name wasn't capitalized, you can easily do it that way. And then, so since I did it already in this cell right here, B10, if I don't want to put in the formula for each one, I click on here, I take my little plus sign, and I drag it down. It automatically will copy the formula and with the corresponding column next to it. So now, originally it said proper A10, and then next to it was A10. Here for Steve, it says A11, so it knows to go down one more. So that's really helpful that it automatically does it. So again, if you had 20, 30, 40, 50 names, it makes it so much easier. You could also, I'm just going to delete these. Instead of pulling them down, if you just see how there's a little plus sign? If you double click, it'll automatically fill it all the way. However, I'm going to delete these for a second and just show you one thing that's good to know. I'll insert one above. Now I'm going to double click. Notice how it only goes to the blank. It won't skip the blank and keep going. So if you have a really long sheet, make sure there's no blanks or anything. It kind of stops it. So make sure you have it fulfilled all the way down. So now what we're going to do is first I'm going to show you how to do formula, which is basically say we wanted to send all of these students their grades. So we just had a class test and they had their grades, and now I want to email it to everyone. So we're going to do that. When you do this, it's really important that you have these headings up here and you know what the headings are, because these are the headings that you're going to be using in order to write the email. So I have first name, last name, email, grade. I always like to split up the first and last name just because you don't know if it's going to be Mr. last name, you're going to call them by their first name, your last name, you don't know what it's going to be. So this way you can really pick and choose. You don't have to worry about separating them, first and last name, going through the whole proper that we had done before. So what we're going to use is an add-on. An add-on is called Formule. So by now you guys know how to get add-ons and manage add-ons. So this is the same way you get all the other add-ons. You go into get add-ons, you find the add-on that you want, and then you add it. Flubrew is a great one to grade quizzes, and we'll actually get in that later this week when we do forms, because it's best to use in conjunction with forms. So in order to get the add-ons, go into the tool here. So AutoCrat and Octopus are also great ones, and so is GMath. We go through GMath in the course as well. And also actually we go through AutoCrat and Octopus too. But they're always putting new ones in. So, look back here frequently because there's some great ones on here. New Visions, they have great add-ons, so it's really beneficial to use them. And split names is also really important because sometimes I know even when you do ask people for their first name in one section and put last name, split names will actually split the names up. So if you use that, if you had here like that, instead of having to copy and paste it into two separate columns, it will do it automatically for you. So right now, we're going to use the add-on called Formule. And this is basically an email merge. This is what it is. So we're going to use that. So go Formule, and then we launch it. So the first thing you have to do is select the sheet. So if you had multiple tabs at the bottom, you're going to want to make sure you select the correct sheet. So right now we just have sheet 1. And we're not going to worry about a form trigger or time trigger. We go over that in the course. How do we work with both of those? Also, you can have different templates for different things. We're not going to worry about it. We're going to keep it the way it is. So we're only going to do one template. And we'll do next. So this is where you need to know your headings, because if you notice, first name, last name, these are your tags. So your headings become your tags. So 2, we click on email. It'll automatically be sent to that email. Subject, this is the subject that you want to send to your students. So webinar for quizzes. So now what do you want to say? So say if I want to make it personal, so I want to say, Dear Amy. I can say Dear, but I can't write Amy here because if I write Amy, what will happen for Carrie, Lauren, and Steve? So I'm going to write Dear, and I'm going to click on first name tag. Notice how it says first name, colon, and then it has these arrows, first name, arrows? We actually only need this part in the arrows. So what we're going to do is we're going to erase this, get rid of that. So Dear Amy, Dear Carrie, Dear Lauren, and then we have to put our comma, because our comma's not in there. You received a grade of, grade, remember we have to get rid of this part, on your quiz. So everyone will have the same email except whatever is in these little brackets. That's what's going to change. So it will say, Dear Amy, you received a grade of whatever she got on your quiz. If you have any questions, please contact me. Dear Carrie, same thing. If you had a section and you wanted to add in feedback, you could do, and you had one of these columns for feedback, you can then also put in the feedback. So you could actually put in feedback, and then click on the tag and the feedback would be there. So that's why you can really make it personal without having to send out 20 different emails at the same time. So now you can send out them all at the same once, everything's there. So we're going to preview this, and what you will see is that each one looks personal. Each one looks like they received it themselves. So it says, Dear Amy, you received a grade of 90 on your quiz. If you have any questions, please contact me. Next person, Dear Carrie, you received a grade of 85. If you have any questions, please contact me. Obviously, I put the same email to everyone, so they're all getting the same, it's saying the same person. It's always good to check them all to make sure they look okay. If you want to go back and edit it, you can. Or we'll go back and preview it. And then we'll click send now. So this person, obviously, there was no email here, so this is invalid. But here it will say it was sent, who it was sent from, so that's whatever email you're logged into, and then who it was sent to. So that's easy enough. Easy enough way to do that. The last thing we're going to do before I can take any questions is I'm going to create a new sheet within the spreadsheet. In order to rename it, you just double click or right click, rename, and we're going to make a graph. So in this one, we're going to make a graph. Graphs are extremely easy to make with a spreadsheet, and it'll be really helpful for your students, especially if you are math or science. And even if you want to take your students' grades, and then you can put them into graphs, which is a great way to do it. So actually, let's do that. We will take their, I'm going to copy that stuff and put it here. I'm going to get rid of their last name and their email. So I'll delete columns B and C. And so now I have their first name, their grade. And actually, I'll put a little bit more in here. So we have a bunch of students and we have grades. Easiest way to make a graph, you highlight. Notice how I'm just highlighting the cells. Insert a chart. So now I get to pick what kind of chart I want. Do I want it to be bar? Do I want it to be pie? Do I want it to be bar that went this way? Those are the recommendations. You can also choose from here different types that you want. Really, you have your pick. Personally, I want to do the bar, so I'm going to do this one. And then we do insert. So, obviously I went over what we want, so we can take it, select it, drag it over. And now we have a nice little graph. We can see easily who did what. However, I don't like the name grade versus first name. So I can change it, just click on it, change it. Webinar for quiz scores. Press enter, and it's been added. I can change the color, size, make it italics, really do whatever you want with it. On the side here, if I want to change the grade, I can. Instead of first name here, I want to say student. And you can really change that. You can also change this. So I could change the color. Or what's really nice, and depending on the graph that you're creating, especially if you're creating a graph for students that might have trouble reading graphs, you can click on this button and you can give it the values. So if you're, depending on your graph and what it looks like and what you actually want the students to pull information, if you have students that might struggle with being able to read the graph, but might not necessarily be what you're looking at, you can have them, the numbers already there. So it's a lot easier for them to look at. And especially if you have a lot, it's easier to just kind of have the numbers there to say. This view mode just takes it away so you can't edit it. So it's a little bit easier to look at without everything around it. You can always change the positioning of this. See how it moves. Depending on where you have it. And finally, you can make it bigger, smaller, whatever you really want. So it's a really easy way to make a graph. If you wanted to change it from this, you click right here, go to Advanced, and you can change the type of chart that you have. So depending on what type of data you want, you can change whatever it looks like. Here's also a little bit easier way, depending on what you want, to actually just, customize it and to edit the chart. So there we go. We have a graph. We created a mail merge. A couple other handy things to know, just the tools themselves. I'll create another sheet for that. Are these buttons. So your borders. So say I had teacher, subject, so 1, 2, 3, and say I want to keep going. I have this pattern going. If I keep scrolling down, it'll automatically fill in the rest of the pattern. So that's handy to have, especially if you want to go 1 to 100 and you don't want to keep typing it in. You just grab a couple to keep the pattern, and you pull it down and it just keeps going. If you just do 1, notice how I just did 1 there? It would just drag the number 19 down. It doesn't recognize a pattern, so now it's just all 19s. But if I grab 16, 17, 18 and drag, it notices the pattern and keeps going. And then also, so what I was saying before are borders. Borders are really helpful, especially if you have a lot of things going on in a graph or in a sheet. So you can highlight what you want and then put in a border. And then it's a little bit easier to see things. Finally, I'm going to put a couple headings across the side here, top here, so you can see something else. So I'm going to bold these, and then notice how when I'm scrolling up, they go away, right? It obviously scrolls away. When I go this way, say if I had a really long Excel sheet, I'm scrolling, that might go away here. This might be important things that I want to look at every time, because these might have to relate to something all the way down here. What we can do is we can freeze this first row and this first column. So in order to do that, we go to View, Freeze, Row 1. So now whenever I scroll, as you can see, these are always here. I'll always see it. You can freeze 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, whatever you want. So you just go to View and then Freeze. If I want to freeze this column, same thing. View, Freeze, 1 column. So now I can scroll this way, the numbers stay there. I can scroll up, and the rest of it stays there as well. So that just makes it really easy to, these might be students' names down here in the column. and you want to see a grade that's all the way down here in K, it's easier to look around. So that's really important, and that's really good to know. We went over the functions, and then finally, same thing. I'm going to put in I'm just going to put in letters here. So notice I have some letters right here, A, B, A, E. And then I'm going to put a filter in. So I'm going to highlight the first row and then click on this filter button. And now notice little tabs come up. So this will allow me to sort things. So if I wanted to sort these from, right now it's sorted from A to Z because number is one down. But if I want to sort it from highest to lowest, it automatically switches it and sorts it from highest to lowest. Or say I'm looking at the subject and notice how I put in a bunch of letters, but there's also a bunch of blanks there. Say I don't want any blanks. I can deselect that, and now only the ones with the letters are showing. Let's say I only wanted A's to show. I can do that and it will only show that. So that will really help if you're doing maybe by grades or if you're looking for people by certain subjects, but however you have it, it'll help you really sort out students. You can change it by condition, so if the cell is empty, not empty, if it's less than, so if you want to see just the students that are failing or above a certain grade, you can change the condition here so it will sort it accordingly. I go back and select everything again. Okay, they're all there. So that's kind of the gist of what we have for Google Sheets. We've covered a formula, how to make a graph, how to sort things, setting up a chart so you can freeze different rows, setting up filters, the functions, the formulas. Make sure these are great functions to use. The sum and the average are phenomenal. Definitely use them. And also the more functions. It gives you a whole list of different ones that you can use that some you don't even realize that are there. It can save you so much time. So before you actually start doing anything in Excel or Sheets, always see if there's a way to get around it, because chances are there is something else that you can do, so you don't actually have to do it by hand. Someone has already figured out a way to make it automatic. Again, the add-on I got was Formule. It's a great add-on, and that's how we did this first one with sending out the emails. We covered it in the course, but I just wanted to go over it again. So the add-on is Formule. So that is the end of this. I'm going to put up this short survey, so please take it. It'll only take not even 5 minutes. It probably takes about 1-2 minutes, if that. I'm going to be on for a little bit, so if you have any questions, just type them in the chat and I will answer them as needed. Thank you so much, and we will have another webinar on Google Forms on Thursday. So I'll be sending out another invite to that soon. All right, and have a great afternoon, evening, guys, and I will probably talk to you guys tomorrow or later on this week. Take care.